Welcome to another episode of Solitaryism, and I'm Robert Bitto, your host. Today I want to get a little personal and talk about my own journey into solitude. Well, I guess it starts in the year 2009 when I moved to a new city. I was moving from Phoenix, Arizona to San Diego, California. The cost of living is much higher in San Diego, and I assumed that the people who would be living here would be maybe a higher class of people, possibly more hardworking, more educated, and I was very eager to come to the new city and make friends. And I was 41 when I moved here to this city. And, well, at the beginning, I was very enthusiastic, and I went out, I did a whole bunch of things, a lot of different things. From civic activities to, the usual bars, and I tried to join groups. I tried to network with people. I volunteered in various capacities with different groups. I was a tutor at the library. I belonged to a cultural group. And then I got involved with the local Mensa chapter. I became a board member, I was vice president, and I was president. And that organization had 960 people at the time that I was president, and that was 2015 to 2016. And I guess being president of that group kind of burned me out. I was doing social things, different meetings and parties and events, probably 3 times a week. And you would think that my social calendar was full. But I really didn't have any friends. No one was inviting me to Thanksgiving, and nobody was really inviting me to hang out and do anything. It was more like what I call canned friends. When you belong to a group and you do social stuff like that, you go to parties, the monthly meetup, or whatever, you're forcing yourself to do social stuff. And a lot of people say, well, that's a great thing to do to end your isolation and to go out and meet people and all of that stuff. Well, I guess I got burned out and I quit being president when my dues were due. And then I quit the group totally. And then I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to go with the flow. You hear people online always saying, if you want something too hard and you try too hard, it's not going to come to you. You just need to relax and let things flow, and then eventually things will come to you. And people say that with money, relationships, a job, whatever. Don't try so hard because the universe will just give it to you when you let it go and you don't try so hard. So I did that. And what happened? Well, what do you think happens when you don't put effort into anything? Nothing happened. I had no social life magically after I quit Mensa. And I really threw my hands up in the air and said, for about 7 years living in San Diego, I've tried and tried and tried. I had this idea that I would have a group of younger entrepreneurial type educated friends, and that never happened. And after I was president of that organization, I just said, forget it. I'm just not going to do anything and see what happens. And nothing happened. And so I said to myself, well, is being alone all that bad? I spent a lot of time and a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of energy, psychic energy into trying to get a social life in San Diego. And it never happened. So I just said, is it really worth it? And I started to concentrate on other things. I totally gave up, and I know that's a loaded phrase, but I totally gave up on trying to have a social life. And the whole idea of going cold turkey and not socializing with anyone, at first it seemed kind of weird, even a little scary. Because the thought that you're alone in the world and nobody is there to call to pick you up at the airport or to invite you to Thanksgiving dinner or even for a weekend of fun, that can be kind of a daunting thought. But what I did is I increased other activities in my life, and I filled the holes that were left behind from my attempts at socializing, all that time that I spent and all that money and all those resources, all that energy. So I just filled it with other activities. And, I likened the whole idea of going cold turkey and being solitary and living a cloistered kind of life. I likened that to giving up sugar or giving up television. I haven't owned a television since 2008. And there have been times in my life where I've just said, okay, I'm not going to have sugar for the next 4 months or whatever. So the same thing happened with giving up people. So I gave up people, gave up socialization. The same feelings I went through with giving up sugar and giving up television were the same feelings I went through with giving up people. And what does that feel like? Well, for the first few days, the first week, it was weird, it was hard. You might even have a little withdrawal symptoms. But then after a week or two, you just break free and it's smooth sailing. Since I quit that group in the spring of 2016, I haven't done anything socially, really. I think I got one invitation from someone to a dinner who belonged to that group, and that was like a year later. I got invited to a dinner. But I haven't really done anything socially. And the funny thing is I marked in my mind that August of 2015 was the last time anyone was in my home, until October of 2022, when a neighbor asked me if she could see my Native American art collection in my living room. And I let her come into my home for about 10 minutes and gave her a little tour of my living room. And so within a span of 7 years, a little over 7 years between 2015 and 2022, I had no one come into my home except for repair people like a plumber, a plumber. There was some appliance repairmen, and that was it. And so some people would look at that with disdain. In fact, in late 2022, about a month and a half after that neighbor came in and looked at my collection for about 15 minutes, I invited another neighbor to come to my home because he told me he was a videographer, and I thought maybe I could use some of his services for my business or for other creative activities that I had going on the side, those activities that filled the holes of my social gaps. So I invited him to come into my home, and we sat down and talked about it. And we had 2 meetings. And the first meeting, he said, wow, you got a lot of stuff in here. I've never been in a place like this before. So I gave him a tour of my entire home that lasted about 45 minutes. And he said, wow, when your friends come over here, they just must be impressed with all this stuff you have. And I told him, I said, you know what, you're the second person to step foot into this place in 7 years. And his reaction was, aww. Well, some people just don't get it. It was by choice. So there was no aw, like, woe is me, poor me, like that sort of thing. No, it's nothing like that. It was all by choice. And I created my own home environment to make it a beautiful place for me. Why should I do it for other people? It's my place. It's an extension of me, extension of my personality. And so, I haven't had really any visitors since August of 2015. And I'm totally fine with that. I don't even think about it. Like I mentioned in another video, I'm like a fish in water who's swimming around who doesn't know he's in water. And that's what happens when you cut through the loneliness, you restructure your life, and you break through. There's something glorious on the other side that most people don't get to. They just stay stuck in this loneliness, in this woe is me, I'm not paired up with someone, I don't have friends, no one's calling me. They get mired into that thing instead of pulling yourself up and creating something completely new that is centered around you and what you like and what you want to do in life. It's something that's a little too radical for a lot of people because it goes against the programming that we're given. Loner equals loser. There's only one letter difference in those two words, if you notice that. But yeah, being alone is not that bad. In fact, this is how it's going to be for me for the rest of my life. And that's basically my journey in a nutshell. Thanks for listening, and remember to be happy alone.